top 10 most ridiculous things the Hulk has survived. Incredible, immortal, indestructible. Since the Incredible Hulk took his very first steps, a heavy-set fear has weighed upon those who truly understand the monster's immense strength and indomitable rage. Those who have seen the true destructive capabilities of Marvel's resident Gamma Goliath are right to worry about what would happen should he ever truly lose control. How would he be stopped? What on earth could stop him? Bruce Banner himself often frets over this one simple but hugely consequential question. Can the Hulk die? Well, the answer is anything but straightforward. For one thing, the Incredible Hulk has perhaps one of the most awe-inspiring power sets in the entire Marvel canon. Best known, of course, for his incalculable strength. The Green Goliath's irradiated muscles are ultimately just one facet of his Gamma-given godhood. Another, lesser known of the Hulk's abilities, includes one absolutely outrageous healing factor. Indeed, over the course of Hulk's history, we've seen the Jade Giant survive just about everything under the sun, with some even going so far as to call the massive monster immortal. It's not completely clear if the Hulk's healing factor can be said to be quite that all-encompassing, but after looking at the top 10 most insane things the Hulk has ever walked away from, you can judge yourself whether or not you think there's anything in the whole universe that could possibly put an end to the undisputed Sultan of Smash. Number 10. The Gamma Bomb. Starting out small, the first thing on our list is none other than a literal atomic device. It's called the Incredible G-Bomb, on the first page of Incredible Hulk number 1, where everyone's favorite rage monster first made his world debut. While preparing for the ill-fated test that would turn him into one of the most notorious monsters of his generation, Dr. Bruce Banner is cautioned by a colleague. Nobody has checked your work. If you've made an error, you might blow up half the continent. Which speaks not only to the sheer destructive capability of the device, but also to the ego of its creator. For one thing, harnessing enough power to demolish half of a continent is a horrifying concept. But the morality of warfare aside, what's most salient to our discussion is the true size of the blast. This was a bomb built to decimate cities, countries, continents even. A bomb designed to kill millions. And yet somehow, from this fiery inferno of death, new life was born. The Incredible Hulk's very first seconds in this world were spent confused, suffering, and desperately clinging to life amidst the torrential flame and toxic radiation of a nuclear holocaust. Some have postulated that the Hulk actually stepped in to save Banner that day. That when Bruce drove out onto the testing range to save the young and flippant Rick Jones, when the scientist responsible for the bomb was caught in his own creation's blast, that the resulting monstrosity was somehow one of mercy. Bruce doesn't see it that way. How could something produced by such immense violence, something with a temper that could level cities, be considered charity? Years later, Banner would think back on that fateful day, saying, "Why does a man who could have used his brain to find a cure for cancer build a weapon of mass destruction? Maybe that's why I could never be seen as the hero. Maybe this was the price I had to pay for unleashing the Gamma Bomb on the world." Whatever the reason for the Hulk's creation, one thing's for sure. Even in his infancy, in the very first moments of his creation, the Hulk proved just what he could survive. Based on what gave him life, how could anything ever hope to take it away? Number 9. Being eaten alive by a swarm of bugs. If the Gamma Bomb was the Hulk's alpha, we now skip all the way to his omega, void of all. Incredible Hulk The End depicts a barren, dystopian planet void of all intelligent life, save one single being. Having outlived the entirety of the human race, as well as nuclear Armageddon, the Hulk finds himself alone in an empty world. But even after the humans who so fervently hunted the Hulk are all dead and gone, danger still remains. Most notably, a scourge of deadly predatory insects roams the lands, raising and dismantling all organic matter they find. A million tiny wing beats merge together into a cacophony of buzzing. So many are their numbers that their migration towards food literally shakes the ground at Banner's feet. Before the bugs arrive, inevitably, the Hulk emerges as Banner becomes more and more frightened, his emotions peaking until his not-so-welcome backseat driver eventually takes the wheel. When the insects reach the Hulk, they begin their grim business without hesitation. Hulk thrashes and flails as he tries to fight off the colony of invaders, but to no avail. Banner explains, given any single foe or even any group of foes, and the Hulk was always able to triumph, but trying to beat back a bug attack is like trying to fight the surf. For all the good it does you to battle it, you might as well not try at all. And though Hulk tries his hardest, raging as hot as a sun, while thousands of tiny pincers slice at his skin and slowly devour him bit by bit. Afterwards, watching playback of the event, Banner would get to witness just how devastating the damage to Hulk's body was. I mean, the Hulk was all but completely dismantled by the attack. His innards spilled out through an empty stomach, his irradiated skin flayed and tearing after the bugs had their way with him. And yet, even in the face of these downright disgusting injuries, Banner thinks calmly, "This looks like a bad one. It's gonna take a while for him to recover." Indeed, by Bruce's time, after being almost entirely devoured, the Hulk would regrow his body to a functional standard in only 18 minutes. 18 minutes! While certainly the Hulk has been defeated by more impressive means in his time, don't worry, we'll get there. This bug attack at the end of the world gives us a true sense of just how powerful the Hulk's healing factor is, as well as how, even across spans of hundreds of years, the Hulk's powers of rehabilitation don't seem anywhere near slowing down. But before we see what on earth the Hulk has gotten himself into next, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload, and smash that like button for some plot armor today. And buckle up, folks, our list only gets more intense from here on out. Number 8. Snapped Neck. It's one thing to return from a slow, messy death, but what about a single, violent, horrible act of stone-cold brutality? Perhaps a more head-on approach is required to take down the not-so-jolly green giant. When the Hulk once time-traveled to a dystopian world in which a future version of himself was a brutal dictator, his healing factor was put to the test in just such a way. Hulk's future self, named the Maestro, was none too happy to find his younger self rummaging around his territory uninvited. Inevitably, the meeting between the two quickly ramped up to violence, and the two Hulks did what Hulks do best. They smashed one another. Though at this point in comic history, Bruce Banner was in control, even while hulked out. Colloquially known these days as Smart Hulk. Having his human side remain in control is both a great relief and a detriment to the Hulk's power levels. Regardless, up against the Maestro, Banner was at a supreme disadvantage. Not only were Hulk's strength levels not up to snuff, but the Maestro continually played on Banner's sympathetic side, threatening civilians and even demolishing entire buildings during their fight to distract Bruce and gain the upper hand. The Maestro's tactics worked like a charm. With almost terrifying deftness, the Maestro snuck up behind the Hulk as he was digging for victims in the rubble and lunged at Banner with an expert chokehold. Wasting no time, the Maestro quickly brought his massive fists around to either side of Hulk's face and ripped the Hulk's head as hard as he could around his neck. The result was probably the loudest neck snap in history as the Hulk's massive head swiveled around with sickening savagery. Still, the Maestro whispered to Hulk as he was torn from consciousness.
Bet you think you're gonna die now, eh, Hulk? And you figure that if you die, then I won't exist. So you'll have the last laugh. Wrong, Hulk. Wrong on both counts.
Indeed, even a snapped neck, courtesy of another Hulk, wouldn't be enough to keep the Jade Giant down long. Though, interestingly, the time it takes for Hulk's body to repair itself would be much longer than 18 minutes, and it would need the aid of a neck brace. This is significant for our inquiry in a number of ways, but two lessons are far more significant than the others. 1. It shows that Hulk's healing factor has a harder time rebounding from sudden and precisely targeted attacks than all-encompassing dismantlement. And the necessity of a neck brace implies that Hulk's injuries, if not treated correctly, could heal improperly. Apparently, the Hulk's healing factor, while incredibly potent, is not perfect. Number 7. Black Bolt's Scream. After Marvel's premier boys club and world's worst think tank, the Illuminati decided to banish the Hulk from Earth by tricking him into a rocket and blasting him into deep space, the Jade Giant was understandably pretty pissed. So when he came careening back to Earth atop a spaceship filled with an alien army at his command, there was no doubt he meant business. Of the Illuminati members that agreed to send Banner on a permanent vacation, there was perhaps none more powerful than Black Bolt, the speechless, inhuman king. Even Black Bolt's mumbles have the strength of monsoons, his every chuckle unleashing enough force to turn mountains to dust. When the Hulk landed on the moon, the royal family met him there, and the Green Goliath was warned of the dangers of his challenge. Medusa, Queen of the Inhumans, spoke on Black Bolt's behalf. "You come unannounced to the land of the Inhumans, girded for war," Medusa warned. "But you cannot win this fight. You have faced my lord before, Hulk, and you were defeated. Black Bolt's master blow can shatter your bones, and his merest whisper will blow your broken body into the sun." Still, Hulk approached Black Bolt, towering over the Inhuman King. Eventually, when Hulk went so far as to grab Black Bolt and initiate combat, the Inhuman King had no choice but to speak. "Enough," Black Bolt breathed. And still, it was enough to wrench Hulk's massive feet from the ground beneath him. Hulk's skin nearly ripped from his skeleton as the monster's raging form held onto Black Bolt for dear life. Eventually, even the Hulk's legendary grip was forced to break and he was thrown back, impacting the surface of the moon with the force of a bullet fired. Yet far from simply surviving, the Hulk was back up and lunging at the Inhuman King in a matter of seconds, bellowing,
I didn't come here for a whisper. I want to hear you scream!
Though Black Bolt's single word admittedly didn't come as close to killing the Hulk as the previous entries on our list, the thing is, it should have. This moment, the first steps Hulk has taken in his own solar system again after months of banishment, represent one of the angriest times in the Gamma Monster's entire existence. Watching the Hulk take the full brunt of Black Bolt's power without even needing a moment's composure before jumping back into the fray is quite frankly a terrifying display of durability. There is no other on Earth who could have performed such a feat, much less successfully defeated Black Bolt in the aftermath. Though this moment doesn't represent the closest Hulk has ever come to death, it gives us just a glimpse into how indomitable the Jade Giant is when he's really, really mad. Number 6. The Helios Laser. When the Avengers once again found themselves tasked with containing a rampaging Hulk, they knew that they were in for a fight. What they didn't know was just how much firepower they would need to put Hulk on ice. A formidable lineup of Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Ghost Rider, Iron Man, She-Hulk, Thor, and Captain America were sent into the field to pacify the rampaging Gamma Monster. Once again, we see Hulk at his most ramped up, his angriest. While his fight with Black Bolt was cold, calculated rage, the Hulk the Avengers witnessed that day was an entirely different beast. This was rage unshackled, erupting from every pore. He became well and truly unstoppable, and he proved it on the battlefield. When Thor came at him, Hulk literally cracked the god's skull in one punch, putting one of the Avengers' heaviest hitters out of commission before the fight had even started. When Iron Man engaged the monster with his Hulkbuster armor, the Hulk ripped through the metal plating like paper. Tony was so at risk that he had to eject almost immediately or else find himself squarely in the way of the Hulk's swinging fists. Even She-Hulk, in her hulked out form, was unable to knock out her rampaging cousin. Hulk managed to find the perfect opening and hit Jen so hard, She flew 2 miles before touching ground. Only minutes into the fight and their ranks already in complete shambles. The Avengers turned to their last resort, a backup plan they had hoped would never be necessary. They called in an orbital strike from the Helios Laser, a satellite built with one purpose: to stop the Hulk during a worst-case scenario. This was that scenario. The Helios unloaded its quarry on the spot, with enough destructive force to level the small town that had served as their battlefield. While the Gamma Bomb was designed to destroy as much as possible, the Helios Laser was an extremely precise tool for taking down one enemy. The downward force projected by the Helios satellite onto the Hulk's shoulders at that moment must have been like trying to lift the weight of a planet. When the Avengers returned to the blast site, they found only the ashen, burned body of one Bruce Banner. And yet, even still, the Hulk would soon again wake, although this time in the basement of a government facility. And though his eyes could see and his brain would once again think, he would only be able to do both from inside a glass jug. The government had completely taken the Hulk apart and was keeping him like a science experiment with each body part in a different jar. But we'll get to that. Number 5. He had a mountain range dropped on him, made famous not only by the absolutely exceptional cover art by Bob Layton, but also for the sheer immensity of the act itself. Secret Wars number 4 witnesses the Hulk performing not only one of his most death-defying acts, one of his most heroic as well. In the midst of the dreadful war between heroes and villains for the mere entertainment of cosmic entities, Marvel's heroes were forced to evacuate their base of operations, sling their injured across their backs, and flee for their lives. But in doing so, they have left themselves completely vulnerable to attack. Seeing this, the villainous team, well, they didn't hold back. Seeking to impress his fellow evildoers, the immensely powerful Molecule Man saw the scrambling heroes and casually decided to drop an entire mountain range on them. He didn't even break a sweat. The range landed with a deafening crash, reshaping the very geography of the strange alien planet upon which they strode. Surely, the vile villain thought, no one could survive such a devastating force being suddenly dropped upon them. They would be wrong. For underneath 150 billion tons of hardened rock stood one man with quite literally the weight of the world on his shoulders. Even the heroes trapped below an unimaginable weight were surprised to open their eyes and find themselves still alive. But when Photon alit the room, everyone stared in awe at the massive tense figure of the Hulk, bracing 2 miles of mountain on his massive shoulders. Though even for the Hulk, this was pushing the limits of his capacity. Reed Richards, quick thinker as he is, understood this and began heckling the Hulk while he stood stalwart, in order to anger him further and buy everyone a few more seconds before his arms gave out. Eventually, by rerouting Iron Man's repulsors through Photon and the Human Torch's natural power sources, Mr. Fantastic was able to blast the heroes out of their tomb. Though Reed's quick thinking was what allowed them to escape, everyone understood that it was the Hulk's vast strength and sheer refusal to be crushed that were the true saviors that day. Number 4. Disemboweled by Wolverine. Over the years, the Hulk and the X-Men's resident berserker Wolverine have had their fair share of scraps. Calling them rivals might be a stretch, but certainly a less than playful competition has sprung up between these two Marvel legends. Given their long history, not to mention their shared anger management issues, it's no surprise that one of the Hulk's most gruesome injuries once came at the claws of the original Weapon X. Once, while the Hulk was trying, and failing, to lay low during a snowstorm, he came face to face yet again with his Canadian adversary. The Hulk took Wolverine by surprise to start, but with the help of his adamantium claws, the mutant quickly bought himself some breathing room.
You miserable little shrimp!
Hulk roared as he backed off to tend his wounds.
You cut me? I'll tear you apart for that!
Backing away, Wolverine considers for a moment before carefully replying, "Sorry, my mistake." Hulk is understandably taken aback by Wolverine's sudden cool-headedness. "I used to be like you, Hulk. Loved to scrap more than anything," the X-Man explains. "I have important things to do, Hulk, and I'm not gonna fight you today." The Hulk, sporting his gray appearance during this particular era, doesn't feel quite as generous as good old Captain Canada.
"Then you'll die today!"
The monster roars as he once again dives for Wolverine's neck. This ignites the fight in earnest, and even though Wolverine continues to object, the Hulk continuously, viciously barrels down on him until the mutant has no choice but to put an end to their hostilities with force.
All right!
The man snarls as he leaps forward and plunges his claws deep into the Hulk's chest, ripping all the way through the gray Goliath's stomach and even past his spine. While we've seen the Hulk brush off the force of a sonic boom without breaking a sweat, Wolverine's adamantium-coated slicers pose a real threat to the Hulk because they can easily rip through the monster's tough outer skin, sinking deep into his irradiated innards. After disemboweling the Hulk, something still tugs at the edge of Wolverine's killer instinct. He turns his head back to his fallen foe to see something he can barely believe.
He's standing. He's alive,
Wolverine thinks as he watches the Hulk stand, green blood still seeping from his open wound.
He's actually getting angrier. He's getting stronger. And the gaping wounds in his chest are healing.
When their battle reignited, Wolverine and the Hulk raged against one another like never before. Though no winner would be crowned that day, one thing is crystal clear. When his ego is on the line, the Hulk can come back from even the most crippling of injuries. Number 3. Jumping into the center of a planet. After the Hulk was banished from Earth by the Illuminati, the Jade Giant spent years living on a distant planet as a slave and gladiatorial fighter under a brutal dictator named the Red King. Finding himself with a devoted following of rebels who were adamant about overthrowing the dictator, the Hulk found two things he had been sorely lacking back on his home planet: community and a shared purpose. Renamed the Green Scar by his new people, the Hulk led the fight as they stormed the very gates of the Red King's castle, dismantling the King's rule with breathtaking force and efficiency. As the Red King quickly began to realize that he had no hope of retaining his crown, he activated a last-ditch failsafe protocol designed to destroy the planet from the inside out should his rule ever come under threat. His corporal and eventual wife Kyera explains to Hulk the manner of the Red King's actions as the world beneath their feet begins to come apart. "I'm an old strong. This planet talks to me, and it cannot hold. The Red King has cracked the plates." As the combatants on both sides begin to despair, believing the inevitable end was approaching fast, Hulk hears one of his generals mutter, "With all his strength, the Green Scar could smash this world to pieces, but what can he do to heal it?" But Hulk, deeply emotional and enraged, refused to give up the new life he had just found. And more importantly, he refused to let all those who believed in him down. The Green Scar jumped deep into the crevice that the Red King had opened. He plummeted all the way down to the center of the planet itself. Wrestling both sides of the sundered tectonic plates in his mighty fists, the Incredible Hulk heaved the entire planet back into realignment. Though this will always go down as one of the Hulk's most impressive feats of strength, it underappreciated just how indestructible the Hulk had to be in order to pull this off in the first place. Diving to the center of a planet covered in molten lava and hot magma, anyone else would have been instantaneously disintegrated by the conditions Hulk willingly accepted. And yet, in that moment, the Hulk's rage was outrageously potent, burning inside him with such ferocity that I doubt the Green Scar even felt the scalding magma looking at his flesh. Number 2. Literally being dismantled. So, does everyone remember earlier when the Avengers took down the Hulk with the Helios Laser and the government stripped him for parts? Well, there's nothing that says immortal like being disassembled and still retaining consciousness. For all of the one-shot blows and knockout punches on this list, there's no denying that being deconstructed piece for piece and somehow still surviving, even from the inside of test tubes, might have to be one of the most incredible feats of constitution the Hulk has ever achieved. After the Avengers barely managed to haul the Hulk in, the government gave his body to one Dr. Clive at the Secret Operations Lab, oh so subtly entitled Shadow Base. Dr. Clive was ordered to scientifically uncover what the limits of Hulk's powers were, specifically his regenerative abilities. Dismantling the monster from head to toe was the first step. Keeping the Hulk unconscious, that proved completely impossible, as the Jade Giant's piercing green eyes stared back at the scientists from the inside of his jar, unable to speak, but somehow still alive and awake, even remarkably in control of multiple limbs at once. Being kept alive in a jar is one thing, but to be separated body part by body part for the explicit purpose of dissection and still cling to life is downright spooky. The surgeons examining the Hulk's body even had to take the parts out of the room for operation because when they returned within proximity to Hulk's brain, they would start to move again. Ultimately, Hulk managed to escape by letting his captors think they had imprisoned him. When it was just him and Dr. Clive in the lab, the doctor noticed the Hulk's decapitated face smiling at him from its test tube. Unnerved, the doctor began ranting to the face, demeaning it in a futile attempt to show dominance. Unbeknownst to him, in another jar containing the Hulk's mighty hand began preparing to snap. The force of the snap burst not only one test tube, but the entire laboratory stock of Hulk's parts. The resulting chaos was a whirling, horrifying twist of gore and flesh as the extracted chunks of the Hulk's body went about the nasty work of reassembling themselves, all with the good Dr. Clive sandwiched directly in the middle. After the incredibly swift reconstruction of his body, Hulk had completely smashed Dr. Clive within himself, absorbing the Doctor through osmosis from the inside out. Frankly, this example speaks for itself. All I can think to say about it is, yikes. Number 1. Survived the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. Hulk has faced many enemies in his time. He has single-handedly taken down demons, monsters, and even the entire Avengers rosters. But no fight has ever brought Hulk further to the brink than his encounter with the Sentry at the climax of the World War Hulk event. The Sentry, for the uninitiated among us, is the singular most powerful being in the Marvel Universe, imbued with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. Mild-mannered Bob Reynolds' alter ego is home to both the most powerful hero and the most powerful evil in the cosmos. But for our purposes, all we need to know about Marvel's Golden God is that he is incredibly, otherworldly powerful. So, when the Hulk literally took over the world that one time, there was no one left to turn to than Bruce Banner's old pal, Bob Reynolds. "Hello, old friend," the Sentry said as he dealt the Hulk a blow so forceful it would have cracked an asteroid. But remember, the world has never seen the Hulk as angry as he was during the World War Hulk event. This is a green Goliath with incalculable strength, filled with unimaginable rage and fury. He's certainly not going down in one punch.
You don't want this fight, Sentry,
the Hulk said, with surprising tranquility. Yes, God help me, I do, because you're the only one I can hit like this. As he unleashed another ruinous uppercut into the Hulk's gut, sending him flying halfway across town. With that, the Hulk and the Sentry began to clash in earnest, unleashing levels of power the world has never seen and likely won't again. Even merely surviving one maxed out punch from the Sentry is enough to consider someone immensely powerful. Hulk took blow after blow from the man, all while returning his own offense as well. Each hit the Hulk took should have atomized the monster where he stood, and yet the Hulk refused to back down. Being kept alive, being kept together even, by nothing more than raw, unadulterated fury. At the end of it all, in the flash of light that sprang from the two warring titans as they pummeled one another with the might of gods, only Bob Reynolds and Bruce Banner were left standing. The Hulk and the Sentry had completely spent their reservoirs of power on each other, and in the end, both reverted back to their mortal forms. It's hard to describe exactly what the Hulk's physical body went through during this fight. Never before has the Sentry had to unleash his full power on any being in all of creation. Not only does this represent the most unbelievable feat of tenacity from the Hulk, it likely stands as the most damage any being in the Marvel Universe has ever been inflicted and lived to tell the tale, more than any other item on our list. His fight with the Sentry proves that the Hulk is without a doubt indomitable. Thanks so much for watching today's video. Do you have any other favorite Hulk moments that didn't make our list? Let us know in the comments. This has been Anthony Fan, and on behalf of all of us here at Plot Armor Comics, have a smashing day.